Okay, so here we are for our second July video, and I really love the masking technique that I share in this for this page specifically. So we're going to start out with some painter's tape, and July is kind of about different ways to mask. Like before, we masked directly on top of a painted background. That was the first video for this month. This time we're going to create a mask and apply it to our paper before we do anything. So I'm using some painter's tape, and I'm tearing some pieces off, and I'm kind of keeping it in this idea that I have. I want well, excuse me. I want to make a round mask. And so now what I'm doing, I've got the size paper that I want, and I was just taking some round objects that I have laying around. This is actually like a little paper clip holder kind of like little thing. And after I have my masking tape, and remember this is painter's tape, right? After I have my tape laid out on a non-stick craft mat so that I can peel it back up and it's not going to hurt anything that's underneath it, I traced the circle, and now I'm just freehand cutting it. And I'm sure you could find some other ways to do this. You could use a fluid mask and like put it through a stencil or anything that's sort of like that. But I have lots of this painter's tape, and there's always like 100 ways to do everything. And so that's what I kind of went with today. Was this masking tape was really close by, the painter's tape, and it was really, really easy to grab and to do. And now I'm bringing back out my newsprint because I am going to be doing a lot of inking and stamping and stuff like that. So I really enjoy it when I have things that spill over onto the newsprint, and then I can use the newsprint at a later time. And I'm showing all the different kinds of sprays and stuff that I have, and I probably don't even have half of them that are on the market. But I have different inks and some Tattered Angels. I have Clear Snap Smooch. I have Distress Stain sprays. There's Prima Bloom sprays. I have like a homemade coffee. There's a goodness, I should get a drink of water. Excuse me. There was like a Mr. Huey's in there. I have all kinds of them. But specifically today, I'm going to go with a couple of the Distress Stain sprays because I'm really impressed with the color quality that they have. I'm going to use my homemade coffee also. I did just give my background like a little bit of a spray with some water. And that was a wash brush, like a mop brush that you saw there. And I did that so that I could get this coffee, when I spray it, to go all over. I wanted it to be subtle in the background. And I say that, but I should clarify, I wanted a subtle layer. So if I spray water first, and I am using Canson watercolor paper. Sorry, I didn't mention that in the beginning, but I use that 99.9% of the time. Because I wanted a subtle color in the background, I put down the water first. And that allowed the coffee to really disperse out and spread out on the paper. And then, after I've heated that and dried it, I went back in with a smaller squirt on the dry paper of the coffee. Because after I had the nice subtle layer in the background, I did want some kind of like dark, chunky splatters as well. And as I heat those and they really start to dry, they end up this like really nice caramely coffee color. It's really, really good. And then I also always tend to do like one main area in my art journaling, like one specific like point of interest, and then I like to have to the left side, or in this instance it's to the left side. It's not always to the left, but I also like to have a little area that is in contrast. So I didn't just leave the whole left side blank. I also sprayed a little bit of coffee over there so that I could have that as a contrasting point, as a complementary point over there. And I do have to tape down my paper. I got pretty heavy with that water and it started to curl. So until later, after I have some more layers and it starts to flatten back out, I need to kind of keep it flat while I'm working on it. So I just brought out some more painter's tape. Now I've got some distress stain sprays, those two that I picked up earlier, and they have really great color to them. And today is a really good kind of like tip or trick about working with the distress stain sprays, because the thing to remember is that they're water reactive. So if you spray one wet distress stain spray on top of another one, they're just going to mix. But if you're careful and you're very specific about where you lay the color down, then you can keep them more separate. And by that I mean, I've unscrewed the top rather than just spray directly from the pump on the bottle. I've unscrewed the top, splattered it down in a couple areas, like at the top and the bottom right of the circle, and then over to the left. Then I sprayed it with water so that it started to seep out and kind of spread out on my paper a little bit. But I still have the nice concentrated color, and I've got them in very specific areas. So then, after they're dry and I've got them completely dry, I didn't want them very wet at all because wet on wet is really going to mix. And even dry on wet will mix a bit because of the distress stain sprays formula. They are water reactive. So even after they're dried, they'll come back up with water. But by keeping those areas separated, like I've already got the green down. Now here I go with the blue, and I'll give you those specific colors in just a minute. But now I'm applying the blue ones in specific areas away from the green. There is a little bit of overlap, which is just fine because it's not like I want the colors completely separate throughout the whole project. I just didn't want my green and my blue to mix completely and make sort of like a teal, which I like teal plenty, but I was going for a more like earthy kind of toned effect today. So following the same process with the green, I splattered a little bit around the edge away from the green and on that left-hand side, and then I spritzed it with water so that it could start to disperse and kind of spread out on the paper. And then I'm heating it like super quick so that it's not sitting there kind of like moving around and starting to mix. But you can even see right there at the top, it's gotten a little bit tealy where it did touch the green, and it's probably activating with the coffee a little bit as well. That's just the nature of the beast, you know. Those are the kinds of products that these all are, and I really love them though. I did just use a paper towel to sop up some of that teal where it was still a bit wet. Now I've gotten out some of my favorite background stamps from Viva Las Vegas Stamps, and I'm using my archival ink pad from Ranger. And this one is the dictionary background. I really love this one. It's super small, totally legible font that is in the shape of like a newsprint or like a newspaper or a dictionary. Then this one is a waybill invoice background, and it has lots of like numbers and some handwriting on it with some lines like an invoice paper would have. Both of those I designed, and I love them, use them all the time. This one is a bubble wrap texture. You can see I just stamped it there just to double check the stamp was working. I hadn't used it in quite a while, and it looked like it had something in it. But it's got these really great little like circles, kind of like if you had stamped with bubble wrap, but they're a lot smaller, so they really lend themselves well to background work like this. I really enjoy designing rubber stamps. This one is a mesh background, and it's like super small dots, which makes it really, really great for filling in empty spaces, which is what I'm kind of working on. I know that when I lift up that blue painter's tape in the middle, there should be a very large white circle to work in. So I really want to concentrate around the outside of it, bringing in lots of color and texture. And that one was a coffee ring stamp that we have at Viva Las Vegas Stamps. And I really do enjoy making my own coffee rings, but sometimes for quickness and for continuity, like if I'm working on a bunch of pages or something, and especially if I want to stamp in kind of a fun color, I really enjoy having that stamp close at hand too. And then I stamped these numbers just as I'm not even sure why. I like how they turned out, but I actually didn't use numbers in the class. And at the end of this video, so at the beginning of the video, you saw this page finished. At the end of the video, you'll actually see the page that I made in class because I went from horizontal to a vertical layout, and it looks just as great. And I chose different colors in class to kind of get some variety. So definitely take a look at that. You'll enjoy that. And that's what I've been doing, just stamping and really working on darkening kind of that area around the circle. I've got my fine liner, and I really like splattering with my fine liner. I think it's very controlled compared to some of the other things. And that doesn't mean I don't like using a paintbrush. Often enough, I do get out a paintbrush and splatter with that as well. But the fine liner, I knew almost exactly what it was going to disperse as far as drop size. Now, I never know where they're going to land, which is kind of one of the really fun things about splattering and creating drop effects, but I knew the size of the drop, and so that's why I pulled out that fine liner and went with that. And I just gave it a quick squeeze and then flicked it with my wrist towards the paper. Make sure everything's dry and it's all heated and cured and ready to go. And now I'm getting out some of my Wow Studio stencils, kind of as a little final step here before I pull off the mask. And I don't think I actually end up using quite that many, but what I'm going to do, and it's very funny, right? Because I think some people, after working in mixed media with stencils so much and spraying through them and putting whatever through them, paints and things like that, like we kind of forget that you can just doodle through a stencil as well. So that's all I'm doing. I'm using the black pen and going through the Wow Studio checkerboard stencil to really create kind of, I mean, they're little open boxes, and you can see them in the close-up picture. They're very cool, and they add a great touch. And it's not too much, and it's not too little. Now I'm gonna, oh, and I did use a permanent pen, a Pitt pen, so make sure you use something permanent. Now I am pulling up that mask, and you can see there was a little bit of color that seeped through where the tape was overlaid, but I really don't mind. I'm going back with that same Pitt pen now that I have taken up the mask, and I'm just drawing a circle around. I'm not concentrating on making it perfect. I'm just going over and over and over, and it's kind of like this very sketchy, kind of fun, cool background. And I drew some little lines, and I think I might do a few dots, but it's nothing specific. I'm just creating a border between the kind of stark whiteness and then that very cool, grungy, like painty, stampy ring that we've created. And I'm drawing a border along the edge, kind of keeping the whole doodle theme going on. And I always really encourage my students in class, get out your pen and do some doodling and do more handmade things. Do more hand done pieces in your work, because it is fine to use masks and stencils and stamps and stuff like that, but it's just going to be a bit more personal if you use pens with your hands as well. I think I must be rooting around in my stamps. Yeah, I was looking for this stamp. I adore this stamp. This is by Mary Vogel Lozenak, and I think we have it labeled like from Viva Las Vegas Stamps. It's labeled like whimsical lettered man, and it's just so stinking awesome. I love everything about it. I love the neck. I love the facial features. I love the size of it, the proportions. It's just a really great stamp, and it's so artsy and fun, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. So I did go ahead and stamp this in Archival ink, permanent by Ranger, just right there in the middle. And I really love the contrast that I have going on now with this like super dark permanent stamp in the middle. the white circle behind, and then the doodle and the grunginess that just starts to kind of spread out from the face. And I got out some aquarelle crayons. These are watercolor crayons. They're water reactive. And all I'm doing is coloring the cheek a little bit with that aquarelle. And then I am brightening it up with the water. Just a tiny, tiny little bit. That's it. Nothing, nothing too intense. Just, and we have this labeled as whimsical lettered man, but it could certainly be a woman as well, very easily. The face is very androgynous. It's very, very cool. Sorry about that background noise. That's my little guy. He's out playing. Just a little more doodling going on. And I think that's it from here. Kind of a suggestion if you're going to doodle with pens, you know, some of them will get eaten pretty quickly. Oh, okay, I did do this. I apologize. I thought I was done. So I switched from my pen to my Posca paint marker, and because I wanted to scribble some handwriting really big, and if I was going back and forth between the paper and the paint and overall the texture that's there, it would very easily eat up the nib that's on my pen. So definitely keep that in mind. Like Posca paint markers are really, really, really great for going over textured areas and like fabric and stuff like that. Anywhere that might have like anywhere that has lots of texture. Most of the really good pens have like a felt tip on them, and the texture really eats it up. So if you don't have the Posca paint markers, I now have them in 2 sizes. They're super fabulous and delicious, and I adore them. After my doodled background, I did go back in and kind of just wonky stylized like a heavier border with my Posca paint pen too. All right, and thank you so much for joining me. I will see you for the August videos, or see you in August class. Thanks so much.